Okay, today we are going to make a Blender ball bounce animation. We're going to do it in kind of three parts. The first part, we're going to do basically the simplest ball bounce you possibly can do in Blender. That will be mostly manipulating curves in the curve editor here, using both Bezier curves and then at the very end the bounce kind of dynamic effect for the final bit as it kind of settles down. Once we do that, it'll probably take about 5 minutes to do that. We're going to do kind of improve it with some squash and stretch. So you notice with this one, the ball kind of stretches and squashes as it flies through the air, giving it a more stylized effect and kind of selling the effect of the ball bouncing a lot better. After we do that, which will probably take 20 to 30 minutes, we are going to then render it out with some camera settings, maybe some motion blur, so that way we have a kind of final version of what we did. So with that being said, I'm going to pull these off to the side so I can reference them as I work. We are going to jump right into Blender here. This is just a startup project. I'm going to delete all the normal stuff. I'm in Blender 4.2.4, though there's probably not a reason this wouldn't work in other versions. I'm going to make a plane. Let me turn on, since this does actually involve a decent number of shortcuts. There we go. So for this, I just press Shift A, and then mesh, and then created a plane. And then I'm clicking my plane here and just setting the scale to 50. And that usually works pretty well for me. And then Control A to reset the scale. Okay, I'm going to use an icosphere. You could probably use a normal sphere, but I just like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the side view. We are going to press K. Normally in previous versions of Blender, I think you can press I instead, and this brings it up. In the newer version, you press K to select the keyframe you want to use. We are going to need a keyframe there. I think I messed this up. 1 second. I want to grab a new window. It's kind of fiddly. And I want the graph editor right here. So if you notice under the graph editor, currently it's just going to be a bunch of lines because we don't have any movement. So we're going to take frame number 1 and we are going to move up to 22. Okay. So now that we have it up on Z, I'm actually going to delete the Y and turn off the X. I'm then going to go to frame 11. So let me actually zoom out. I'm going to reset the frames to 60 here. Start at frame 0. And I'm going to make sure to zoom this correctly. I'll zoom this one down here. Okay, now that we got that set up, so the ball at frame 11, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to copy that and paste it into frame 11. I am then going to go to frame 35 right here and paste it again right there. And then at frame 18, actually frame 0, I'm going to press this button here. And actually, I think these may be wrong. What are these set at? Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, I'm turning on the auto keying button and I'm just going to move this ball up to 22, like that. So you notice if we click A and then num button, we have the curves right here. And then if we go to frame 18, we want to, if we press I down here, we can do only selected channels, which we have Z selected. And then just pressing G and then Y and moving this up. And then what I want to do is this keyframe here, I'm going to right click and do bounce. So you notice it gives us this kind of bounce effect to the next key. And we're going to scale this one down, bring this one over, G, to kind of match the curve there. And then this one, we're going to kind of, I'm going to expand it a little bit. You can also select this one, and for handle type, press free, and then you can adjust this as you would want. So then if we click this, now that we have that curve, oh, we're pressing it in reversed. We got kind of just a straight up and down drop. So that's a nice simple ball bounce, but that's kind of boring. So we are going to add in the Y section here. We're only going to need 2 keyframes for the Y. I'm actually going to turn off the Z just so we don't mess anything up. I'm going to delete this keyframe. Okay, I'm going to delete, I think these are just handles. Yeah. So this one down here is going to end up as -22, like that. And then this one we'll go ahead and put +22. Oops. +22. So if we press A and then zoom those in, and then what we want here is we want this to not be curved. We want this to be basically linear. And then this we can keep kind of curved. We can even expand this out a bit if we want. We're actually going to move this also a bit further down to about 45, just like that. So if you have both your curves, they're going to look something like this. And you notice what we've done is the ball kind of bounces in and rolls for a little bit, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so that's the ball bounce, right? That took, 5 minutes or so. But let's improve it. So let's get this done, but we're going to add in the squash and stretch. And how we're going to do that, we're going to use a few different tricks within Blender. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to click this here, and under motion paths, I'm going to calculate motion paths in range, scene frame range. That's fine. And you can see where it is at every frame. And that's under the ball here. You can even change the colors. And you can see that's the path it follows. So what we want to do, we're going to need another window. There we go. This window is going to be the dope sheet, but we don't actually want the dope sheet. We want the action editor. So this we're going to label ball bounce. And then we are going to create an empty. I'm going to grab one with arrows, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to call this ball bounce track point. Kind of like that. And we are going to give it the ball bounce animation. So if you notice, if we turn off our ball, this thing, the empty we made, follows the same path. We are now going to duplicate this though. So I press this little duplicate for the action. And this, I'm going to call it ball bounce track point. And then all we want to do here is take all these keyframes and move them back one, which means all the animations will play a little bit sooner. So if we toggle our ball back on, it's always one frame in front of the ball. And what that's going to do, I'm going to turn off auto keying, and I'm just going to increase the Z by 1 so you can see the nice stretched ball. But what this is going to do is we want the ball to track this empty. So it's always kind of facing, so that way when it stretches and goes along the bounce path, it looks correct. However, Blender doesn't, there is probably a way to do it, but Blender doesn't work well with things that are both animated and following constraints, other than a few exceptions. So the way we're going to kind of get around those problems is we're going to create another empty. A few, actually. So this one we're going to call bounce handle. And this one is just going to use the ball bounce animation. And then we're going to create one more. And this one is going to be called track handle. And this one won't actually have any animations. However, so I selected this, Control P, and I'm going to transform that. But I want this to, let's select this one, Shift S, cursor to selection, and then I'm just going to do selection to cursor, just to make sure they're right where it should be. And then the ball is going to, well, I'll just label this ball, is going to go under the track handle. By the way, save this project if you're working from home. I'm not saving it just because to keep flow, but remember to save in case you crash. Okay, so we have the bounce handle, the track handle. The ball, we're actually going to remove the ball bounce from this because you notice it's basically playing the animation twice. So we don't actually want that. Let's actually go back to the start and then we'll remove it from the ball like this. So there you see. And then for the track handle, since the ball's parented it, this is where we'll put the constraint. And it's just going to be a track 2. And we are just going to grab the ball track point. I'll relabel that. It's a bit shorter. See how the ball turned. However, let's make sure to get the axes right. So this is, we're actually going to do it by the x-axis. And on the z is our up. And world space, world space. So notice what we have now. The ball follows the track point, so it's like always going along that. One thing you notice at the very end here, it kind of does this weird thing. That's because it's finally catching up. So to fix that, we'll grab the track point, and at the very end, at this, we're just going to bring it a little bit. We'll turn on auto keying again. We'll just bring it a little bit further in the Y. There's a few other adjustments that we'll make as well. So for example, right here, we actually want the track point to be a bit further below this right here, like that. because we want it on the surface, not on the center, because the ball's kind of like aiming towards the surface. Even right here, we would probably want it a bit lower, but there's a way I'll show you how to do that, where we're just going to grab this one, and we are just going to press G and Y, and not this one. We only want the Z location. So this one we are also going to bring below a little bit until it looks right. So that way it has a nice angle there. I wonder if we actually might want this higher though. Let's make sure that looks right. So it goes down, up, not that high. We'll give it a little bit. I think we overdid it a little bit. Let's zoom in. What's the actual value we're giving it? If you click the actual thing under it'll give you the value. Let's do like 0.5. That should be good. There we go. And there it's following the angle, just what we kind of want. Okay, excellent. So now we have the ball kind of following the path of motion. We want it to squash correctly. And this we can do on the ball itself. So for this, we'll make a new action here, and we'll just call this scale. Call it ball scale. If we press K while the ball selection, we'll do scale. And this is actually going to be a bit strange in how it's set up, but it gives a really good effect actually. So how we're going to do it is we're going to start with the Z, because if you remember, that's what is, we'll make that 1 to start. We're going to turn off the other two, since we're going to be mostly messing with the curves here. We need to add some frames though. So with Z selected, I'll add a frame on 5, add a frame on 10. Let's see here. I think 11 actually. Yes. Where is... Okay. All right, let's grab this again. Yeah, we'll add one there, and then keep going. We will add another one on 15, and then we will add another frame on 27, then a little bit after that on 30, and we're going to leave that. We're going to add more frames, but I'm going to set up these so you kind of know what we're going to do here. So every other frame, so this one, shift, and this one, we are going to bring up. So G, Y, and then we're going to right click, and we are going to make them a constant interpretation. So if you notice, there's like kind of this sawtooth pattern here. Let's bring them up quite a bit since we want them to be close to the value. We want them around like, let's see here, like 1.6 I think works pretty well. I'm just going to press A and then tab. Okay, there we go. And then these will progressively reduce. We still want them higher than 1. So if you notice, see it stretches there. And then the moment it hits right there, we want this to actually dip below. So let's see here. We can scale that to like, I think 0.6 works well. So it kind of stretches, and then it squashes, and then it stretches again as it expands, and then it's going to squash right here. This one's actually out of sync right here. So this one, once again, will be just a bit less than that. And then it's going to stretch again. We'll bring this one down closer to 1. That's not a very big bounce. We're going to need another one right here. So I select channel. This one should be constant. We can bring it down like this. And then here we'll kind of taper it off. We'll do one more. Oops, we forgot to select it. There we go. This one we want Bezier, just like, or this, oops, sorry. This one should be Bezier, like that. This one will be constant. And then we can add in a final keyframe around 50. This should be 1. And then this one we can set down here. So this is going to be bounce, and then this is going to be Bezier. So you notice there's like kind of this sawtooth pattern until the final one, and then it just like tapers off. Just like that. Now this is the stretch, right? But we want the squash. So you notice between this and this frame, it almost like, it looks like the ball shrinks, which we don't really want because that volume has to go somewhere. And the place it's going to go, how that's traditionally represented, is it like goes out the sides. So what we need to do is within the other scale, I'm going to actually lock the Z scale. And within Z and Y, we are basically going to make the inverse sawtooth pattern. It's going to be exactly the same other than it's flipped, and it will be a bit less pronounced. It'll be about half because we're scaling 2 axes versus 1. So we'll add keyframes in all the same place. I think we forgot one there. And then where's the final keyframe? I think it was 50. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so then we can take this, kind of bring it down. Same with this one. Same with this one. And this one. Let's see how this frame looks here. And then this we want to be shift select these. These we want to be constant, like this. And then these we can bring up since we want to scale it. And we'll basically scale it. This is 1 right here, so it's going to be, I'm going to put it about the same, but on the other side. And then this final frame, we can bring it up a bit. This one should also be constant. Probably a bit less. And then this one, we can add in that bounce. Or not this one, this one. We can add in that bounce. Like that, and notice it kind of bounces on the in the opposite direction. So let's see how this looks. So you see it hits that, and it kind of, it squashes, but it squashes out the side. However, now that we've done this, you'll see some problems. So for example, this angle is a bit weird. Like in this frame, it never even collides with the ground. Now that we've added this squash and stretch, once again, the angle is kind of strange. So there's a bunch of things that we would want to be different. So what we can do here is not for the ball itself, but for the bounce handle. We can select all these, and it might be worth saving a copy right before you do this. Save it and then save a new version. Let's bake out the channels. We have a few settings here, but we're just going to do it for every step. And now that we have this, we can turn on auto keying, and we can affect what we want. So for example, this we can like bring down a bit. But before that, we're actually going to bake the track handle as well. And that we want, but this one we actually want like a bit high. And we'll kind of smooth these out. Not that. I'm just going to use the smooth here, Alt S. Like that. Just so this looks a bit better, and then the bounce handle itself, I'm going to bring down. I am going to calculate the motion paths for these. For the ball, how do we get rid of motion paths? We're just going to, there we go. We just remove them from the ball, so the ball doesn't actually have motion paths anymore. And then this frame also needs to be adjusted. So let's grab the track point. Oops. G, Z. I'm just gonna move that up. Might even delete some of these actually. and just let the Bezier curve kind of do some of its job there. We may actually want a frame here. Just right there. There we go. Let's check where's the actual bounce? That's when it squishes. We can bring these in. I'm going to unlock this. I kind of want it to like turn unsquished a little bit quicker. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. So we got like a frame of it squashed and then it stretches out pretty quickly again. However, once again, it's not quite touching the ground. So we can actually G, Z, and just bring it down. Just like that. And since we have auto keying on, you notice that moved this as well. Okay, so now that we have a bouncing ball. So this is what it kind of looks. I'm going to tone down. I like the stretch here, but it's staying pretty aggressively stretched even later on, right around here. I think this should be a bit milder. So I'm going to reduce this a bit. I think that's okay. Yeah, I like that. So there's our bouncing ball with the thing. We are going to do the final step here and get a render done. So in order to set up a render, we need a camera. So we're going to add a camera. Now that I've made the camera, press Control Alt Space, and then I can do Shift tilde, and then I have a little effect there. This is another reason why I like the motion path, is it can help you, I'm scroll wheeling to move the camera faster. You can frame your animation a lot better because you can just kind of see the entire motion. I'm going to swap over to Eevee Render. My computer's thinking. Okay, there we go. Now that it's over here, I think I will actually need to save this. I'm going to put it, I'm just going to call this ball bounce tutorial. While I'm here, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it render bounce tutorial. I'm going to grab this path here, and then I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to save. And then I'm going to take that path, and I'm going to put it in the output, and then I'm going to do bounce tutorial. I'm going to put a backslash and then bounce tutorial, and that final backslash will be the actual name of the file. I don't want a PNG, I just want a FFmpeg video. I'm okay with these settings here. I like ambient occlusion. They've now put it under the ray trace setting. It's going to be right there. Fast GI. I'm going to crank up that bias a bit. If you want to be fancy, you can turn on motion blur. I'm going to turn it on, but I think I'm going to increase the, let's see here. I think increasing the shutter speed decreases motion blur. Okay, and then the ball is rather hard to see, so we're going to give it a material. So let's see, shutter speed of 1. Should be a bit less motion blur, I think. I'm not an expert on the post-processing settings though. So I'm going to add a new material. I'm just going to call this matte ball, and I'm going to make it green. Maybe like a dark green. I kind of like that. There we go. So now we got the bouncing ball. We got it in camera. And finally, we will need a light actually. Let's do scene lights, scene world. So you gotta notice there's basically nothing. So I'm just gonna create a sun and grab it. I'll turn that back on and just kind of rotate it. I like that. And then we'll render out the animation here. So we got the ball coming in. That's actually a lot of motion blur. Let's see here. Time taken in frames between shutter open and close. So the longer, so that would be a slower shutter speed. So we actually want this to be faster. We had that reversed. There we go. Much better. By the way, I am animating at 24 frames per second. So if you're animating at a different frame rate, obviously it'll feel different for you. Something weird was happening there though. Now that we have like the contact shadow, let's see what's going on. We can turn off this. I'm actually going to delete these since we don't actually want to animate the camera or the light. Pressing 1 on the tab. So that contacts, so notice right there, it never actually contacts the ground, which is no good. Since we have all these baked though, we can just adjust it. I'm going to turn on auto key again, and we're just going to bring this down like that. I'm going to bring this a little bit up. There we go. So now it very definitively bounces on the ground. And then while we're at it, we might as well, I want to grab all these keyframes. I'm going to zoom into this. Grab this keyframe here, and we're just going to bring all these up. We'll bring it a little bit down. I think that's pretty good. Let's give it another render. Got the nice stretch, squash, stretch, bounce, bounce. There we go. It actually kind of impacts it there and then it rolls away. And there you go. This tutorial took a while, but I saw a lot of bouncing ball tutorials. I've tried using Bezier curves and like follow path, but by far I like this one, this method, because you can kind of, if you turn off all the other settings and just look at the Z location, it looks like a bouncing ball. So that's why I kind of like this method. It's a bit more intuitive than setting up like a curve and using a follow path modifier. It's a little bit harder to get the timing, though that does have its uses. So for example, maybe I'll do one in the future. If you're doing like a ball bouncing off a wall like this, potentially using a curve is a bit easier. However, it's harder. You know, even with this one, the timing is a little finicky. So there's a trade-off of kind of all animation methods, even something simple like a bouncing ball. All right, catch y'all later.